Hello, everyone. My name is Tooways Asma. Welcome to another episode of Tooways to Skin a Cat, a show where we talk career experiences, entrepreneurship, and investments. The main aim is to show there's more than one way to climb the corporate ladder, and there's more than one way to be successful other than climbing the corporate ladder. We had a little bit of technical issues, but we're back on track, so that's great. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. A reminder that the show will be available on podcast tomorrow. So if you're watching live, drop a one in the comments so that we know we're not talking to ourselves, and drop a two in the comments if you're watching the recording. My guest for this week is Notamago or Cami Mbulawa, Chartered Accountant, Executive Director at Riscura, Non-Executive Director at the Takeover Regulation Panel, University of the Western Cape, Africa Check, which is a new one I didn't see before, and Aeon Investment Management. That's a lot. Cami, thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Wes. I'm so happy to be here today. That is quite a few jobs, but it's a passion. So, it's something you're willing to do.
I like it. But let's jump straight into questions. Tell us your story. Where do you come from? And outside of work, who is Cami Mbulawa? Give us that backstory.
Okay. So I'm from Cape Town, Gugulethu to be specific. And my CA story started like late in the 90s. I enjoyed accounting. I always left it last because, everything made sense. It was beautiful. So I knew I was very interested in that stream until, my mom at that point found out there were only 10 Black chartered accountants in the country. So it became, our thing. Let's do it. That was my journey. As you know, it's never as smooth as you plan it. There's always twists and turns on the road. But I spent my time at KPMG, and I did my articles there, which is where I met you. And I really enjoyed articles, not so much audit, more than the networks, the people. It was incredible. And that's where I actually started my corporate governance journey through a colleague who invited me to the SPCA to join their board. And that's where it started. I was with him for about 7 years. And, then you introduced me to Aeon and a few other, so that's how the network's always gone. That's why I think I will always be appreciative of the CASA designation. It's opened so many doors. The networks are quite amazing if you take the time to nurture them. So briefly, that's my journey. And then about a year ago, I decided to professionalize, the passion. And I went for chartered directorship certification with the Institute of Directors. I've just finished that. That was harrowing, but it actually made me appreciate all the work I've put into this, what I used to call a side hustle when I started out. And it's grown to quite an incredible network. And I'm expecting my CDSA designation in July.
Awesome. That's brilliant. So maybe for the young professional who's watching and they're thinking, I'd also want to be a non-executive director. What advice do you have for them? How do they start? Where do they go? What are the steps or tips that you can give them?
I always say you start with an industry that you're really keen on and be willing to do it for free for a few years while you find your feet. What worked really well for me is, I remember doing audit and I was like, what does a board of directors do? That sounds fascinating. And then I got an idea and I was like, okay, I kind of like that high level strategic view. And then it was literally fate just to say, I don't really know much about the SPCA besides taking out dogs there once a year. But I know they do incredible work. So I met with a few of the directors and I joined, I jumped in. And it was a lot of hands-on work in the beginning. For me, when it crystallized and I knew that this is a real passion for me, is whichever job I went as an entry financial manager, everyone knew every Thursday, once a month, I'm on the freeway to Grassy Park at 3:30. Any other thing I will do, I'll stay at work till any other time, but those were non-negotiable. And when people say, what's your passion, it's usually what you're willing to do for free. And that's a good judge of it. So if you want to be non-exec, you've got to be willing to do it for free, for it, to learn the ropes, to give back as well, and to just gain some credibility and experience the different organizations. That allowed me to step into a lot of different type of organizations, and then obviously with the experience and credibility comes more paying opportunities.
So be willing to do it for free. Maybe start with a non-profit so that you learn the ropes and you don't jump in at the deep end. I like that. Now, how do you manage the different requirements on your time that come from all these different organizations? Because I'm sure there must have been like potential conflicts of interest that crop up every now and
then. Yeah, sure. I think the industry is quite small and limited, so there are bound to be conflicts. How I approach it is I disclose to everybody that I work with. So if I join a new organization, I let all the current organizations know, registration numbers, and you just manage it through transparency and doing it on time, not once it's already done and dusted. So just checking in with your stakeholders that there's no objection to you joining this particular board for any reason. And then in terms of managing time, the nice thing with passion is sometimes if you can't, those days when you can't sleep, it's 4 a.m., you open up the laptop, you go through your board packs, you prepare, you make your notes, you make your commentaries. And I'm very lucky now to be working with an organization full-time, my actual full-time job, that brought me in knowing that this is my passion, these are my commitments, and they've been willing to obviously be flexible around my time in attending meetings, as long as there's no balls drops as the usual deal.
No, makes sense. Now I noticed that you're a council member at the University of the Western Cape, specifically appointed by the Minister of Higher Education. Ministers don't run in the same circles as young professionals. How do you gain access to that level of person?
Okay, so I've been appointed by 2 ministers. One was, I still don't know who actually nominated me into the council. It's confidential. And, you go through the nominations, they call you and you say, and I was like, yes, of course. I didn't even ask about the money. I found out later it was, it's a passion project, but it was, it's incredible. UWC, I think both my parents were there. I know you were there. It's an incredible institution. I was so honored to be invited in any capacity. So the minister there, so the head of council will nominate you. A few people will go through the departments, and then the minister makes their final decisions, depending, I think, on the skills that they need. And, I'm usually the youngest at the table, so it's also introducing a bit of youth to the usual mix. And then the other minister, I actually applied through a newspaper ad. I got a call. It's managed by the DTI, which is the Takeover Regulation Panel. So there I went through interviews with the actual DTI and the chair of the panel. And then I went on to getting the appointment. It takes a while. It's very comfortable with government waiting periods. And, you put your applications out there. I've made a lot of applications that were in the newspaper that I never heard back from, or one or twice where, sorry, you weren't successful. So you just have to literally take the plunge and do the work and ask your friends for recommendations.
Okay, and so apply for the stuff that comes in. Yeah, it was me hoping you had a contact number for a minister that I could borrow, but okay, we'll try again
my
later.
My friend. Even me, I wish.
A reminder to everyone that we'll be responding to questions towards the end, so please add your questions to the chat now so that we don't miss out on any questions for Cami. Cami, you worked, you did your articles in Cape Town, but you worked a bit in Cape Town and a bit in Joburg as well. What do you have, or what advice do you have for the professional who's making a decision between the two, especially young Black professionals?
I think we've had this conversation a few times. It's such a personal decision. So some people well, we native Cape Townians, so it's easy to stay, right? A lot of young Black people come to Cape Town for varsity, UWC, UCT, Stellies, and depending on your field, a lot of the financial services guys stay because a lot of the asset managers are here. So that kind of makes sense. Some are keen on staying, but there's just not as many jobs, as diverse jobs as Joburg. So you'll be attracted. And I think that it's easier to ascend in Joburg, whereas Cape Town, it's usually smaller teams. So that's like a personal decision that you have. It took me years to move to Joburg because I think I still wasn't done with Cape Town. There were still a lot of interesting roles, and then it got to a point where I think I was senior enough. So there's actually a lot of junior jobs in Cape Town. It's the senior jobs that don't come up often. And that's where the challenge is when you get to a little bit further in your career, if you do stay in town. And I packed up my stuff and I drove myself to Joburg. And I really, really enjoyed that city. I must say, it has a different energy. I loved seeing, how ambitious everyone on. And I think I went to one dinner party and 3 people who didn't even know what chartered accounts do had introduced me to their chartered accounts friends. It's one of those cities where everybody's there to achieve something. So, I was lucky enough to meet people who wanted to introduce me to the right people. And then, after a while, I'd been with Riscura, so I joined Riscura in Joburg. And we have a small office in Melbourne's Arch, but we were also starting the CA training program. And as you know, I've been on psycho structures since I qualified as a CA. And I was like, okay, that's the perfect job for me. I'd love to produce CAs. And we needed to be based in Cape Town. So I left Joburg before I'd planned to, but the work was worth it. So I always say to people, Cape Town won't let me go.
I think it's a good reason to come back. But anyways, you meet with a lot of senior executives and influential people who manage hundreds of billions on behalf of pension funds. How do you stand in your power and show your abilities when you are in meetings such as these?
Sure. I think preparation is half of it. So, we A types. If with me, even if I'm very uncomfortable with my role, or if I'm not sure what my role is, if you give me information, I'll go look it up, make sure I'm as prepared as I can be. So that for me, I feel a lot of power in doing that work. So I can ask the right questions if I'm not sure of something, or give decent feedback if it's client work, and it comes with experience. And the nice thing with, remember when in audit he had to ask this really like intimidating CFO like why things move, and you'd be there, your knees would be knocking, and this guy would be going out of his way to intimidate you. That's also a big learning curve because I also still need my answers. You can intimidate me as much as you like, but I do need to know certain things. So that was really, really good training for also just trusting yourself. And the respect is a big part of it. You've got to be respectful when you deal with people. So it doesn't antagonize a situation unnecessarily. And I think that's usually how I enter a room. I'm respectful of people in it, and I'm respectful of what I know and what I don't know.
No, that's great advice. You mentioned that you're managing the psycho program at Riscura. That's a different but very important responsibility. So from a training officer's perspective, what advice do you have for trainees? Any spells of wisdom for them?
I just want to reiterate that they are on the right track. It's been 10 years, 12 years into this designation. I regret nothing. There was a lot of work that went into it. It's blood, sweat, and tears, especially at articles, but you can taste it. You're almost there. There's usually 1 or 2, 3 things to get through, and you're almost there. So you're on the right path. I think what's really, really nice about articles is figuring out what you're really passionate about. So with us, our trainees are the only private equity trained trainees in South Africa. So when you come for our interview, we treat you like we also hire a lot of chartered accountants because we largely deal with valuation of unlisted companies. So we want to know your business acumen, your macroeconomics, your accounting, and your valuation knowledge, and that's in the first interview. and then you'll bring it in for a case study. So it's quite technical. You have to have a passion for knowing the level of geek stuff that's going to come up. But you get such a broad look of South Africa's unlisted companies. So we all know the JSE listed, you get such a broad view because we're an independent party. We get to see quite a lot of data, and we release a lot of data for the market because of our independence. So, I mean, those guys, I think Saika did come for our reaccreditation last year, and the lady said she doesn't know where anybody else who's, giving a similar type of training. So I'm really, really excited about producing private equity trained chartered accountants. It's a small market. It's traditionally quite white and male. So it provides a pipeline. And the people who've worked in our business have gone on to run huge unlisted businesses. So this year, I should be signing off my first trainees.
Oh, exciting. And then at the Takeover
we're all
regulation
waiting
panel.
for APC results nervously.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Then at the Takeover regulation panel, your decisions basically impact the economy. And at UWC, your decisions impact the lives of thousands of students and their future dependents. That's a lot of responsibility. How do you handle that? Because I mean, you're not just going into a meeting. Your decisions, correctly or incorrectly, have an impact. How do you manage
that? That's where you are grateful that it is a group of people, because there's so many different perspectives that you will look at an issue a few ways. And, I might have started at point A and thought I was right, but, somebody else will come with another perspective, add another insight. And that, you must always be willing to be flexible in your thinking because you're dealing with such important decisions. I think I joined the council just after fees must fall, but there was a lot of energy in the country around things like that, and we had to deal now with COVID and things like that, and making sure students are safe, staff are safe, and the budgeting of that. So the decisions are varied. There's a lot of moving parts. So I think I approach most things in an attitude of, let me be open. This is how I'm approaching it. This is my viewpoint at this moment in time. But with more information and better information, I am quite flexible. So it's also like being really, really respectful of your colleagues' opinions. I've learned so much. Like I said, I'm usually the youngest at the table, but as my colleagues know, I'm not shy if I am very passionate about something, and I feel that this is a decision I want to stick up for. It's a learning curve.
Okay. No, I mean, that gives us a good idea. Just before we go to questions from the audience, what's one piece of advice you would give your younger self?
Sure. I was quite anxious about even this whole CA thing. There were times when I was like, can you even do it? Why are you even doing this? When I spent weekends and weekends, on a beautiful summer's day, missing parties with my friends. But I would tell me not to worry so much, and I've learned a lot. There's not a lot of things I regret about the decisions I've made. I think it would be nice to know some of the things I know now. Like mostly things will be okay. but you have to put in the work, and you have to build. I build networks. It's natural for me. I'm interested in people. I like being in people's business. I was saying to a colleague, I miss being in people's business in the office kitchen, just grabbing a coffee, like, so what's this and this and this and this. Like, I really, really miss that about being in a work environment. So I'm naturally a collaborative person. And I think that really, really goes a long way in the different roles and capacities.
Let's move on to some questions from the audience. So we've got a question from Dumisani. What's your view of people who are overboarded professional non-executive directors? Doesn't this undermine governance? Overboarded, I mean, probably means they're on too many boards.
Oh, okay. So, some people are professional directors. That's what they do. And they get paid for it. So they have a lot more time. With me, I genuinely I'm at full capacity at the moment. So it's you have to be very careful not to, because you don't have the time to prep. At UWC, sometimes we get a board pack with about 1,200 pages that you have to work your way through before the meeting, because it's a huge institution with a lot of decisions to be made. So if I had to take on, I also like to have a good balance on paying and non-paying work, because I think it keeps me honest. And I like the level of being involved in my community. So I know some people collect, the board memberships because it's their main job. There's no rules around it, but you have to, as part of your fiduciary duty, make sure you can actually execute. And that's really a personal decision.
And I'm assuming it's the chairman of the board's responsibility to make sure that these members have the capacity to do that. Deirdre Vasona wants to know, are you often the only female on the board? And how do you handle confrontation in intense meetings?
Yes, I used to be a lot, especially I think at the SPCA when I started, and then there was another really feisty advocate who joined. I really, really enjoyed having another woman on the board. But now, actually, in the past couple of years, especially I think at the TRP, they've gone a lot. Our chair is a very well respected corporate governance professional. And with a solid portfolio. So it's not a lot. It's definitely not where it should be. But I'm enjoying not being the only one. It's also quite nice to start seeing the female faces around the table. But it is definitely still a boys' game.
We've got a question here on lifting as you rise. Have you been part of transformation strategies where you had to forcefully stand by and believe in how you think we're doing, and how do you think we're doing in the corporate space? Sorry, that was in the third person, and I was trying to reword it into the first. Apologies.
Yeah. So genuinely, that was why I was so keen on being the training officer for it. So as you know, if I get an offer, I'm not able to do it, the first thing, you pass it on to your friends, you pass it on to your network. The second thing is, being available to younger professionals in your business. You don't even have to go out of your way. Be available, be approachable. And there's a lot of advocacy you can do in that capacity. But on real stats, we've done a lot of work in our team at Riscura to I think we're a majority Black team, and we're very, very technical. And it's quite nice, showing that to the market, that you can have a very diverse team and be really, really good at what you do. It's more about finding the right person, the passion, the motivation, accountability, and I think younger professionals now have a lot more career options than we did. think when we graduated, it was FM or to stay in audit. And then, you know, the lucky few managed to get some asset management analyst jobs. So there's a lot more options, I think, now in the market. And talk to, I find that, you know what I always used to do in articles even, I'd go sit at a table, it doesn't matter who it was. It might have, because, you know, the Black people had their own clique, it might be the colored people that day, it might be the white, you know. So people in 2008 definitely had cliques. So I would just, if that was the day I felt like speaking Xhosa, I'm at that table. And then, you know, so I will invite myself to a table and just approach my leaders as well. I mean, it might work, it might not work. But, you know, the SPCA was a recommendation from my manager at the time at KPMG. So that's literally just talk. Don't be so, I think we actually now, especially, I might be even be turning into an introvert after a year at home. But we don't speak enough, especially as accountants.
No, accountants need to learn to network better. I can definitely agree with you.
Yeah. So I mean, like you said, this is how you also started your platform, right? You realize that you weren't actually meeting enough people, and you know. So I even at network events, in my younger stuff, I had a lot of capacity to meet new people, and interest in what they do, which is how I usually get approached. You must have an interest. You must be open, and you must actually put it out there.
That's great advice. I've got an answer for this myself, but I think let's have you put some thought to it. Do you so Nonkululeko wants to know, do you provide any mentorship? She's a student who is an aspiring CA, and she feels like some mentorship will really help her.
Yeah, I have in the past, and you know, I think it's tough to keep going. I think we did a good job for about 2 years or so, and then they also move on in their lives. Time is a problem. So I think if you're going to be in a mentorship, you must be clear. I think what also used to at the end didn't really appreciate is someone not preparing for it, not appreciating your time. You know, let's go have a coffee, and it's like very lackluster. So, you know, I really enjoy giving information, and I'm, you know, quite a friendly person, but sure, I felt like, you know, I could have used this time with my family. It was during a weekend, and yeah. So it's I think you have to have. I know Psych has a mentorship program going on at the moment, but I'm not sure it extends to students. And you know, I'm always happy to spend half an hour having a coffee and a catch up. But I think you have to manage yourself well.
That's great. And Nonkululeko, I agree exactly with what she said. Don't be afraid to reach out to people and them saying no. Even if it means you reach out to 20 people, you just need one person to say yes. Mentorship is a two-way street. So you also, whether you realize it or not, you as the mentee also provide value. As long as Cami mentioned, as long as you're prepared for every meeting and you've got pointed questions, you can have more than one mentor. Sometimes it's just about having chats with different people. It might be people at different levels in the career that you're trying to achieve. So don't just go for one person. Think broadly. You can have mentors in different spheres of your life. We've got one more question from Andrew. Andrew asks, are there any sorry about that. Andrew mentions, are there any opportunities for individuals to join private equity jobs who are not CAs, but they have completed their training contracts?
Yes, like I said, if you can do those 4, like I said, your macros, your business acumen, your valuation, your accounting, because valuation takes accounting adjustments. It's very FRC. We're usually doing year-end valuations to go into the financials for our clients. So we need you to be well versed in those 4. We have a few analysts, and you know, one who's not a CA who's risen very, very quickly through our ranks, because he's just literally very, very smart, and he's worked very hard to fill in any gaps he had. So you know, we're very CA biased, but we love finance graduates because, you know, they go deeper into your cost of equity than we ever did in our training. So it's usually a really good balance to have your finance and your sort of CA adjacent people.
That's great. Any last few words from you or anything we didn't discuss that you'd like the audience to know?
You know, I didn't off the top of my head, I think we're not usually in a position to as young Black professionals to follow our passion. We simply, you know, we have a lot of obligations, and I think if you can manage, you know, I'm not one of those abandon everything and, you know, go do what your heart desires. There are bills to be paid. There's, you know, life to be lived that needs money. So I think, you know, be clear about what you would like. You have a reason for wanting this designation in the first place. So first go get it. And then after that, look around and you don't have to do the traditional CA jobs. So briefly, I remember telling one of the partners at KPMG I was going to be a fashion buyer. And he was like, come here at a CA salary. I was like, you know, so that got me thinking. So I was like, I went off in a million directions. And he was like, no, actually, like, you're going to want that CA salary. I was like, you're very right, Bronwyn. I will move that thought backwards, you know. So you dream big, but be realistic about your responsibilities. I mean, if you're lucky not to have any, if you can go do, you know, your stint overseas, that comes in a long way. But, you know, don't look down on South African articles. We have a lot of interesting work here. You'll do perfectly fine whether or not you make it to the overseas audit firms.
And you can still get to your dream. It might just be a few steps in between, but as a CA, you can do that. I normally end with a summary of what's next, but it would be a bit remiss of me not to mention some of the violence that's been happening in certain parts of the world. The impact of colonialism still impacts us to this day. Yes, we are young professionals who talk about business and career growth, but we need to be aware of the injustices happening in the world and try to make a difference, even in a small way. It's our responsibility to be aware of these things because as we become more senior, we are going to inherit the world from the people who are making these decisions. So do we continue on the same path or are we part of the change? Cami, thank you so much for your time. I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Tooways. This was really fun.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us for another episode of Two Ways to Skin a Cat. Goodbye.